Hi, everybody. It is 6 p.m., so we're going to get started to be respectful of your time. Welcome to today's town hall. So, in our 2026 engagement plan, we are going to have 4 quarterly town halls. This is our first town hall on how government makes decisions. And there will be 3 others, one on stormwater, infrastructure, and balancing growth and environment. And why we're doing that is you might have noticed that we're doing a brand refresh. And during that brand refresh, we sent out surveys to the community and we had focus groups. And although we learned a lot about what people cared about in Northport towards the brand refresh, we also saw that there was 4 key themes that residents felt like they didn't have enough information about. And so again, that was, how does the government make decisions? What is our structure of the government? Why are these decisions being made? Which is why we have this town hall today. And then there'll be one in May on stormwater, August infrastructure, and in November balancing growth and environment. So a few housekeeping items. If anybody has to use the restrooms, they are down the hall and to the left. We are going to keep questions till the end of this town hall. There are these comment cards on the back table. Grab a card, fill it out. There's pens back there. Katya with the camera is going to take these cards and then bring them up at the end. If we don't get to all of your questions, we do have to be out of here by 8 p.m. Katya is creating this beautiful engagement hub online. So this will also be recorded. This will have the recording of the meeting today and all of the questions we didn't answer with the answers on that as well. So these are in the back. There's also a few tidbits of information back there as well, like the Citizen's Guide to our 2026 fiscal budget, and it breaks down where taxes go per dollar. Okay, so the purpose of today's hall, like I said, is to get you the information that was wanted about how our city government works. Hopefully by the end of this, you'll gain an understanding of why we make decisions and how we get ideas and then real-life examples. For today, a quick rundown. Welcome. I hope you all feel welcomed. We'll then talk about how our government works and what our form of government is. A lot of people that live in Florida are not always from Florida, and there's different government structures. So we'll talk about the city commission, city manager form of government, and the roles and responsibilities of those different roles. The next would be from ideas, how we get ideas, how they turn into actions, some real world examples, and then the questions at the end. So our presenters today, I am your host, Jane Akins, Community Engagement Coordinator. We have Miss Katya Sutherland in the back, who is collecting your question cards. If you raise your hand, she can give you a piece of paper as well. We want to make sure that your questions get answered. We have Deputy City Manager Jason Yarborough, Performance and Accountability Officer Caitlin Griffin, our Communications Manager and PIO Jason Bartolo, City Manager Jerome Fletcher, Irina Kukrenko, Finance Director, and the Parks and Recreation Director, Sandy Funteller. So moving on, Jason, I'm going to pass this over to you. Ooh, Caitlin.
Okay, let me just make sure. Good evening, everyone. My name is Caitlin Griffin. I'm the Performance and Accountability Officer with the city, as Jane just mentioned. I'm going to start off with talking about what the commission manager form is. And to start off, it's a system that combines both an elected body, so your city commission in the city of Northport, and your professional nonpartisan manager, who's your city manager. The policy decisions are made by those elected officials, and then that's the what. And your how does it get applied and implemented, comes from the city manager and the administration. So why was that form created in the first place? Well, it goes back to the early 20th century, the progressive reform movement. Former President Woodrow Wilson is credited with being the father of public administration. He created this idea that it should be separated, politics and government administration. And what that does is it reduces the political corruption and political favoritism Instead of people being appointed to carry out the policies that are of a certain political nature, they're given that job because of the merit and the things that they bring to that profession. It also promotes transparency and accountability. If you know who's responsible for what, it's easier to hold them accountable for those decisions and actions. It also improves your efficiency and ethical governance. It also separates politics from administration, so it keeps things fair for everyone involved. And if you want to do some more reading, his essay on this topic is The Study of Administration, so if you're really interested. So how common is this form of government? It's extremely common in the state of Florida. Over 305 municipalities out of just over 400 fall under this form of government. And also, almost half of all cities that are 2,500 in population or more are also in a council-manager form of government. More than 92 million Americans live in a community in this form. It goes international too. Over 40 countries have applied this form of government, and there's an international association that brings all of those communities together to learn best practices and learn from one another. So some other forms of government that you may have previously lived in or heard of or are interested in knowing about, there's a strong mayor-council form. So in that scenario, your residents elect the mayor and the council. The mayor is your chief executive, so they serve as that administrative role. They hire and fire the department heads, and the council in that form acts as the legislative body as well. You also have, on the other side, a weak mayor-council. The mayor is elected in that scenario, but they have limited authority. The council has most of the power there. And the mayor often presides over the meetings, but they have small amounts of executive control. And administrative authority is kind of shared throughout that. So it's not solely with one person or one body. Next one is commission only. You have residents that directly elect the commissioners, and that commissioner would then oversee a specific area that they were elected to oversee. They don't have one set professional manager, and the commissioners act as both the legislator and the administrator in that, so it combines those two roles. Then the last one we're going to talk about is the town meeting or select board. That one is kind of the most direct democracy-like form. Your residents vote directly on the policies in town meetings, and then the select board implements those. And you find this most commonly in towns in New England, and typically with places less than 10,000 people. So it's more common there than here. So we'll focus back on the city of Northport and just go through some of the roles and responsibilities that our different areas have. The commission acts as that legislative body. They make the policies, and their responsibilities include adopting your budget, setting the tax rates, planning for growth, capital improvements, land use, and they're also responsible for hiring and evaluating the 3 charter officers, which are the city manager, city clerk, and city attorney. So then the city manager has the role of serving the commission and also the entire community. They are responsible for preparing that budget, hiring and supervising their administrative staff, implementing the policies adopted by the commission, and advising the commission with objective and professional advice and providing detailed information for the best decisions to be made. They also serve at the pleasure of the city commission, and they can be removed by the commission at any time. And then lastly, the mayor, they're a voting member of the city commission. They preside over all of the meetings. They represent the body in regional and intergovernmental events, ceremonies. You'll see them at ribbon cuttings and groundbreakings. And they are appointed annually by the commission. So our 5 commissioners annually will select a mayor and a vice mayor, and that will change each year. So I will hand it, oh, sorry, I won't hand it over yet. So last part is, what role do residents play in that? They're an active member in local decision making. We need residents to provide input to make the best decisions possible. And the way that you can do that is participating in town halls and community engagement events like this. You can serve on boards and advisory councils. You can come and participate in visioning and strategic planning, attend public meetings and make public comment or writing to your commissioners. And also you can check and view how we're performing on our performance dashboards at any time against our goals and our targets that we've set. So overall, really the engagement makes sure that our decisions and the commission's policies that are set are reflective of the community, because your input is then taken into account. So now I will hand it over to Jason Yarborough.
Thank you, Caitlin. Okay, thank you. I'm Jason Yarborough, Deputy City Manager, and thank you all for coming out on this cool, cold evening, depending on your point of view. Benefits of our form of government, City Manager, City Commission, form of government, are professional management, namely. Most managers, they have usually a master's degree. Frequently, it's highly recommended that they be credentialed through the International City Managers Association. So you have the kind of the best of both worlds. You have elected officials who are accountable to the citizens and listen to the needs of the citizens, and handle policy issues. And then you have the day-to-day operations, which is handled by a professional manager. The other benefit is the continuity, for better or for worse. Especially in our particular city, elected officials have term limits. So after two terms, they're done. Whereas typically the city management team is they're longer, so you have more of a continuity. And even though the elected officials may change over, that's a benefit. And there's also definitely a clear separation of roles, like I said before. What Caitlin said previously, the City Commission is focused on big, long-range things as well as policy, whereas the City Manager also is involved in long-range things, but focused on the day-to-day and in a professional way, and also instituting best management practices. The other benefit is accountability. There's one person the City Commission can hold accountable for day-to-day operations, and that's the City Manager. That allows the staff not to necessarily be caught up in political issues that can come about, and it gives them the protection between the politics, still held accountable because the city manager is being held accountable by the elected officials, but it allows staff to go do their job and without fear of reprisal. So it creates a fire break between the politics and the day-to-day operations of the city. And then, one of the benefits of our form of government is it's really scalable. It has a lot of different permutations but still keeping the core structure. You've got some cities where the city manager is allowed to approve contracts up to a certain dollar amount. We don't have that here. You have certain areas where the city manager is able to respond to certain emergencies. We have that here. So it's really scalable, but still the framework as a whole remains consistent. A lot of businesses, when you're attracting businesses, they appreciate and value the elected officials, but they also value the continuity of having a stable staff, especially a stable management team. No one wants to spend hundreds of millions of dollars in infrastructure to bring their business to a community if everyone is changing like a revolving door. So it makes it real hard from a business attraction and retention perspective without that stability, and our form of government provides that stability. And then last but not least, our form of government aligns with, has some really good institutions that are backstopping it, like the International City Managers Association and the Florida City County Managers Association, and even the Florida League of Cities, which is very beneficial. Oh no. Okay. Well, sorry. Okay. Thank you. So if you don't take anything away, take this away tonight. Professional management plus elected leadership equals balanced governance. That's probably one of the biggest things. And the other thing is almost 99% of all city managers are members of the International City Managers Association. And we take an oath, and that oath has a lot of ethical tenets to it that we're held accountable not only by the citizens, not only by the elected officials, but also by our peers in the profession. When you step out of line, bad things can happen to you, and it can have a very detrimental effect to your career. You know, there are city managers who have been kicked out of the International City Managers Association as a result of unethical behavior, and that's a death. It can be a death sentence for your career. So it is a very powerful aspect of professional management. So one of the other things you may be asking, well, managers don't grow on trees, they cost money, and you're absolutely right about that. Does this form of government cost more? And the natural inclination is, well, if we have professional management and they're getting paid, that would cost more than necessarily elected official. Not necessarily, and 9 times out of 10 not, because the professional manager, he or she will bring best management practices, efficiencies, operational efficiencies to running a city. There are a lot of different ways to do things, but giving out your contract to in a non-competitive way, well, first of all, it's illegal, but second of all, it doesn't always get you the best price. So institution of best management practices and being aware of those best management practices and going to school and being trained on those brings efficiencies, which has frequently saves money. Also, city manager forms of government have some of the highest bond ratings in the United States, and that translates into the perception, well, and a value that the financial community, the bond community, states that this is a better form of government, and therefore we're going to charge a lower interest rate in order to loan you money, city, to do your projects. So it's a strong indicator of the value of the form of government that we're in. A city manager frequently, he or she will bring cutting edge technology. They get exposed through their professional management associations. They get exposed to a lot of cutting edge information. You know, we are in the process now of evaluating AI and its benefit to provide better service at a lower cost for our citizens. So those are some of the things that a city management form of government brings to the table. Again, if you don't remember anything, remember this: professional management plus elected leadership equals balanced governance. Again, the city manager form of government, the city manager handles day-to-day operations and makes sure the budget is executed properly, and the elected officials handle policy and the long-range vision for the city. City management also is tied to ethical delivery of service through their agreement to adhere to the ICMA International Code of Ethics, and then city manager isn't designed. The city manager form of government is designed to provide services in a non-political way. So it provides services without any kind of fear or favor. So that's a benefit to the citizens. And then we're on to how decisions are made. Decisions come up from just a ton of different ways. We have citizens on advisory boards, and they'll have good ideas that they will suggest to staff, and ultimately those ideas are then translated over to or transmitted to the city commission, and then the city commission makes a decision whether they want to direct the city manager to pursue those. We have group sessions on like our town hall meetings tonight. A great idea may come out tonight, and then it'll be evaluated by staff or directly by the city commission, and then direction will come out from that. Citizens have access not only to staff to communicate their ideas, but they also have access to their elected officials, and then it migrates on from there. So There's just a lot of different avenues, whether it's through staff, whether it's through the city manager, whether it's through the elected officials, whether it's through advisory board. There's a lot of different paths for decisions to get made, and the citizens are key to all that, to bring their ideas into fruition. And with that, I'm going to hand it over back to Caitlin.
Thank you. Okay, so after we identify an issue, we move on to research and staff analysis. So we don't just go straight to a vote. The commission doesn't immediately act on something. They want to have information and supportive data and evidence for that. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes work that goes into that by city staff to make sure that the idea is doable, it's responsible, it's financially responsible, and it's going to benefit the community. So first we look at feasibility. So is it going to be able to be built? Can we implement this? Can it be maintained? Can we support it long term? We don't just think about today or tomorrow or this year. It's 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. Is that going to still benefit our community? Is it worth the effort, the money, any resources? Next, we also want to make sure it's legal. We have the city attorney's office review and check that everything complies with state law, federal law, our local laws, anything in our contracts that is legal. We want to make sure that's sound and we can do it. Then we have potentially all of our city departments come together and make sure that we're coordinating. You might have police, fire, public works, communications, parks, all involved in one project, finance, and HR. You might have to talk to everybody to make sure that you all are on the same page and that it's not going to impact some other part of the organization. And then we analyze the financial impacts as well. What's the upfront costs, maintenance costs? Are there staffing needs? Does it fit within the city's budget? And then that step is about also trying to reduce the risk and being financially responsible, making sure that when this idea that was generated makes its way to the city commission for their action, direction, guidance on where we should go next with it, that they have as much relevant information as possible to make the best decision for the community. So then once we've had all of that information analyzed and looked into, we start to draft the staff reports or information for the city commission meetings. So we draft potentially the recommendation or a few options that city commission looks at and discusses more. We don't just do it informally. There's not just a brief email written. It goes through a lot of reviews. They're very complete. We try to answer everything in a formal written document that should tell you who, what, why, when, where, how, and how much. There's also presentations that staff might do to commission and the advisory boards as well. We include what the options are that were looked into, pros and cons of doing any of those options as well. We look at financial impacts again and the possible outcomes. Staff then outlines recommended actions. We don't make those formal decisions on that policy direction. That's again what the commission does. But we provide a professional recommendation based on our subject matter experts, law, data, and evidence, and community input as well. And before anything's finalized, those documents get reviewed multiple times. They go through to reviews by the departments, by potentially other departments outside of the one that's preparing it, the city manager, legal, if there's other legal documents involved. And this ensures that we give the commissioners clear, accurate, and vetted information before any public discussions and votes happen on an item. We want to make sure that's all included. And then once they're prepared, they're shared in our agenda packets online ahead of meetings, and they're part of that open decision-making process. And that's where community engagement comes in, and I'm going to pass it over to Jason Bartolone.
Thank you, Caitlin. So public engagement and public input is really important to us as a city, and not only the city commission but the city leadership. We want to hear from the public because we want the community perspective when it comes to decisions that are made. nothing happens in a vacuum, and so every decision that's made by the city takes into account the public input that we receive and the input that we hear from our citizens. You've heard of the sunshine laws, and so there's a lot of transparency that takes place in city government, and the public is invited to provide input and to be a part of the decision-making process. That's because it helps to build trust, and it helps to create civic engagement. We want a dialogue, and through events like this and through all the decision-making process that we're talking about here, the citizens have a role to play. Leaders want to hear from you about what's important, and so they can't do that if you don't come to events or provide, your feedback. Everybody likes to get involved in the conversations on Facebook. You've all been there, but it may not always be the best place for civic discourse and dialogue. And so if you really want to have your voice heard, there are ways to do that. One way is through public comment at commission meetings. The commission meets twice a month, once in the morning and once in the evening. And they do that because they want to be available to the public so that you can come here and have your 3 minutes of public comment. You can speak on almost any item on the agenda. So you can speak multiple times during an item. But if you can't come to the meeting, you can provide input through the clerk's office. You can do that by calling ahead of time and leaving a voice comment that they play or that they read if you provide written comments in advance. There's lots of ways that you could have your voice heard during a meeting, even if you can't be present. Another way to get involved and really have a voice and a say is through the advisory boards. That was mentioned a little earlier, but the commission has set up advisory boards made up of regular citizens on many different topics, whether it's Parks and Rec, the environment, economic development. If you have an interest in any of those, they're always looking for seats to be filled by citizens, and you can actually have a say. You meet as a board, you meet as a group, and the commission tasks them with providing recommendations or input or looking into different issues, and that is considered when the commission as a body is making their decisions. Another way you can get involved and have your voice heard is through our surveys and through our town halls and events like this. We're going to be having an eat and greet event coming up when we get into the budget, where we really want to invite the public to come and learn about the budget and have a say and meet the different departments. We really take pride in making ourselves available to you and hearing your input. Jane mentioned the brand refresh that we did, and we had a survey where we asked people a variety of questions about how they feel about the city's current brand, and we listened to all that input and we gathered all of it. Katya from our team spoke with many of those people that reached out to us and presented all of that to the commission when they made their decision about what to do with our brand. So we really do want to hear from people, and we as a communications team make ourselves and make our city leadership available to you through events like this. And then lastly, you can of course get involved by contacting your commissioners, whether that's individually or through email or by phone or meeting them at their events, and when they're out and about or at town halls. They want to hear from you. They represent you, the citizens, and they can't make a decision if they don't hear from you. Sometimes they hear some of the loudest voices, or they hear some of the same voices over and over, but I know that all 5 of them do want to hear from a variety of people around this city. And so the best way to do that is to reach out to your commissioners and put something on their radar or let them know that something is important to you. With that, I'll turn it over to City Manager Fletcher. He's going to tell you more about how the decision-making process continues.
Thank you, Mr. Barlow. Good evening, everyone. Jerome Fletcher, your City Manager. So now we're going to talk about the commission workshop and deliberations. As you see here, this is when the information from staff is brought forward to our commissioners in public meetings, and it normally begins with a workshop. The workshop is for the commissioners, and they are provided information in advance so that they can read the staff reports, financial impacts, and legal considerations for their decision making. Under Florida Sunshine Law, they cannot deliberate privately. They all must have the same information. It must happen in public view, and that's why these meetings are so very important. But that's also why your public comment plays a critical role in the process. Residents have the opportunity to speak, share concerns, offer support, or suggest alternative methods or decisions before the actual commission finalizes their decision. Your public comment becomes a part of the official record and can actually influence the amendments, the additional research requests, or adjustments to proposals. During deliberation, the commissioners ask questions, they explore options, they request clarifications, and sometimes propose amendments. And this step is to ensure that there's a thoughtful transparent and informed decision-making by professional analysis by our team, as well as community input, which is where you come in. We could have just one workshop per item. Sometimes it takes two. It depends on the topic, the detail of the topic, the length of the topic, and what decision the commission is trying to make. But your voice doesn't just happen before the decisions. It's a part of the decision-making process, and that's very important. This town hall is proof of your decision-making process as we are engaging you so that you can help us. Like during the refresh of the branding of the logo, we got lots of feedback, and some of that feedback led to other topics which you will hear and see when we talk in the upcoming meetings like this one. So step 6 is the formal action. This is where the commission actually takes the next step. After the workshop and the public discussion and community input, they move through the formal meetings where action is taken often through different motions, resolutions, or ordinances. And once approved, that's when staff, our team, moves into implementation, which includes realistic timelines, whether that's a program launching, starting construction, or updating policies. One of the main things that you can imagine about this cycle is the budget process. All projects are not budgeted for every single year, so some of them span over the course of 1 or 2 years, and some of them go into our CIP, some of them go into surtax. They have different ways of being funded. We have a lot of financial process requirements and limitations. One that is very fairly known is the city cannot take out loans or borrow money without voter referendum, and that means we have to save money over time for projects and then pay as we go. And pay as we go is not a good formula for a city of our size. And we also secure grants through our grants team, which is also very beneficial to us on an annual basis. While that can make projects times longer, it ensures transparency and still community control and long-term financial stability. In short, decisions don't just happen. When people say that decisions happen very fast in government, they do not. It takes a while. And now, as we go into our next segment, I'm going to hand it over to our finance director, Arina Kukarenko, and she will chat with you about our capital improvement plan. That's going to give you an overview of the city's 5-year plan that forecasts spending anticipated for capital projects and capital programs.
Thank you, Jerome. My name is Irina Kukarenko. I am the finance director here for the city of Northport. Thank you. And I will provide an overview of our CIP process and how decisions are made. So first I'll start with what is the CIP? Well, the CIP is our capital improvement program, and it forecasts spending on projected projects that we have, or forecasted projects that we have that we are planning in the future. It includes our long-term investments for projects like fire station, our road rehab, our utilities, all of those capital important and very expensive projects. So the city adopts the 5-year CIP each year as a multi-year planning document, but actual appropriation and actual budget happens for just that first year. We have also recently implemented our enhanced capital planning process, and what that does is we prepare a 10-year capital needs assessment. And it provides us with a broader, longer-term planning for those expensive infrastructure that we need to plan for and look what's coming up on the horizon. That also is something that the Commission was very interested in, and they asked us to identify potential funding sources for some of those projects that are on a longer term. Of course, that is something that we project and plan for, but no one has a crystal ball. So some of those things we need to shift and move and reprioritize. So the capital plan then combines the 5-year CIP and the 10-year CNA into a single framework that connects long-range infrastructure for planning and then the annual budget process. It provides us with clearer citywide approach for planning, for prioritizing, for programming, and funding those projects. So why capital planning matters? I'll start with if you own a home, as you know, with owning a home, there are additional expenditures that you have to plan for, additional expenses. So you need to plan for, and in so many number of years, you'll have to replace a roof, or you'll have to replace HVAC system, things like that, that you have to plan for, because if you don't, then when the time comes and you have to do that, you might not have the funding available and not be able to afford it. Well, what then comes is that you might not repair that leaky roof, that then all of a sudden that becomes more expensive, right? So you have to plan for that and allocate or set aside some funding to be able to then do those projects. So plans, capital plans, actually help us allocate the limited resource that we have. We don't have unlimited resources, so we have to then prioritize, and that process helps us prioritizing some of the projects and allocating the limited resources in more of a higher priority projects. So not every project moves forward. We have to sometimes make some trade-offs as we go through that process. And it helps us ensure that decisions advance, that there is service reliability, that we have safe community, that we respond to any regulatory compliance, and we have growth that is done responsibly. We are actually currently in the process of updating our capital needs assessment program, and over the 10 years it comes to about $1.2 billion in capital needs that the city will have. And as I mentioned, we don't have all of the funding available, so there are some projects that are unfunded. We are looking at funding more of a higher priority projects and maybe reallocating some, but that's just something that sometimes not everyone realize, that there are a lot of projects that we just can't afford to do, and we just sometimes have to kick the can down the road, but that does not help, because all of a sudden then the project that maybe cost $2 million if we do it next year, if we don't do it, and then in 5 years it costs $20 million. So that process also helps us build trust. It's a transparent process. We have consistent criteria that we've established, and it also helps us allocate our resources equitable. And what that means is some of our funding is more restricted. So when we look at capital projects and we know that, let's say it's an impact fee that is eligible for that this project is eligible for impact fees, that those projects we're going to try to fund with impact fees first, because the impact fees are more restricted. And then other projects that are not eligible for impact fees, we're going to allocate and look at other funding sources that is available to fund. So how projects enter the capital plan? Well, first, departments are identifying the need, and that is based on asset condition. It might be growth demands, for example, our price widening project or our emergency operations center. It might be in response to safety or regulatory compliance. Or our strategic and master plan alignment. So we've recently completed Parks and Rec master plan, and some of the projects from that master plan were added to our updated capital needs assessment. It could also be a commission directed or from community input. And throughout that process, we also analyze cost impact of renovating versus building new. For example, our fire station 81, it was more cost effective to Good. Sorry about that. Fire Station 81, we had to look at demolishing that project because it was more cost effective to build new than to renovate. After we identify the needs, then we look at whether the project meets our eligibility criteria. So it has to be major significant investment, non-routine. It must provide long-term community benefit and address at least the following criteria where it meets there's a public health and safety, whether it's aging or failing infrastructure, or whether we are responding to legal or regulatory compliance. Is it related to service expansion or economic development? So those are our criteria that departments, when they submit their requests, they have to identify what are at least one of those criteria that we have established for them. Once we confirm that the project is eligible for inclusion in our CAP, we then ask the departments to provide, of course, the cost and what are some funding options that they identified as a potential for funding that project. We require that the departments estimate the cost and include full cost of delivering that project. So that includes design, engineering, everything to bring the project to an end. And then the funding may come from surtax is a big one that we keep going to. And then, as I mentioned, impact and more restricted funds like capacity fees. We also always look for grant opportunities. That's like the first thing. Do we have any grants when we have our budget discussions? That's the first question. The finance department and each department looks them even on their own. They look for any grant opportunities. We love free money, but sometimes there aren't any available. And then because we are pay-as-you-go basis, as the city manager has said, we have to have those funds available before we can proceed with the project. So all of that needs to be in our kind of like bank account, right, before we can move forward. So as I said, we don't have funding available to fund all of the projects. So a lot of projects are listed as unfunded, but through our prioritization process, we try to make sure that those that are high priority are funded. And then all funding shown is preliminary, and then the final decisions are actually made during an annual budget process. So after that, once the projects are included in our capital improvement plan, we ask the departments rank their own projects first. And then we have a cross-departmental committee, and what that committee is responsible for, it reviews the scope, the assumptions made for each project, and then the committee scores those projects independently based on the established criteria that we've developed for them. Currently we are in the process of that, and we had about 200 projects that each committee member had to score. It was a lot, long hours that was allocated to going through that process. But what that helped us is then we have an average score for each project based on those scores that each committee member gave for each project, and now we have a complete list with scoring attached to every single project. So once that happens, then finance, we compile that results and it into a citywide priority list. And then, as I mentioned, some of the funding shifts toward those higher priority projects. We meet as a committee, we go through those projects, and we talk about what are some opportunities for maybe even combining some projects to find some efficiencies. And we have those conversations to come up with some more of a creative ways that we could either fund those projects or come up with some other solutions. And some of the restricted funds, they have to stay within the purpose, but then the shared funding like surtax, it more competes citywide. And once we are done with ranking and prioritization, then it goes for final commission action. Commission reviews the list and the priorities, and also could make some trade-offs and decisions based on that. Projects may be approved, may be delayed, phased, or they might be completely removed from our list. And final CIP is then adopted as part of our annual budget. And I believe that completes my part, and I'm going to pass it over to Sandy Funheller. She is our Parks and Rec Director, who's going to work through and explain our real example.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to take you through an example of one of the most recent neighborhood parks that we put in. It's Boca Chica Park. It's not that far from here, off of Chamberlain. This park was 10 years in the making, and it started in 2016. It was identified in the Parks and Recreation Master Plan at that time as a future park site. And that master plan highlighted park access gaps in central and eastern areas of the city. Our needs assessment at the time called for expanded recreational amenities. Priorities were a dog park, playground, seating, grills, community garden, open space, and preserved wildlife areas. In 2017, a capital improvement program project for Boca Chica Park was added, and it was a concept for the city's second off-leash dog park. We had a public input meeting in March of 2017. We did a neighborhood survey to gauge interest in the development of that park. In 2018, the Boca Chica Park was transitioned to a neighborhood park based on the survey results from the neighborhood that did not want a dog park in their neighborhood. They preferred more of a passive park. So then in 2019, a total of $300,000 in park impact fees was allocated for the project. We had public input again. We did another survey at that point to determine the desired park amenities. As part of that City Commission budget workshops in fiscal year 20, we moved the project out to fiscal year 22. 22 came along, and in those workshops, the project was moved out to fiscal year 23. And then in 2023, an RLI, request for letter of interest, was issued to the for engineering services to the library that we have. DMK Associates was selected, and then we issued an RLI for a construction manager at risk. Half-acre construction company was selected, and then the project delivery team was established. 2024 community needs assessment that we do highlights strong demand for new neighborhood parks with priority on nature trails and nature-based experiences. In February of 24, the construction manager at risk pre-construction services were authorized. In April of that same year, engineering service were approved for the park development, and then we had another public input session, which was with the neighborhood to review a conceptual design for that park. Then in 2025, our budget workshops, we proposed an additional $1 million in park impact fees for the fiscal year 26, because now we had the conceptual design and we had a better idea of how much it was actually going to cost to construct that park. September 2025, we had legal review completed for the CMAR, and the CIP was adopted, allocating that additional $1 million for the park construction. In October 2025, our contract amendment was presented to City Commission for Phase 2 construction, and we also did a Go for Tortoise survey and completed that adjusting the plans to avoid impacts throughout the park area. November 20th, 2025, we had the official groundbreaking. And then we are opening this park on Saturday, February 28th at 10 a.m. And I hope to see all of you there.
Thank you, everybody, for presenting. We'll start with questions. Here, I have a new mic for you. And so if you did not hand a question in, Katya is in the back with the forms. So we will get started. What are we doing about the ongoing issue of speeding in the city? And also, my apologies, I didn't acknowledge Chief Garrison with PD, Chief Titus from Fires in here, and Commissioner Duval. My apologies for not acknowledging you earlier.
Traffic enforcement maintains or remains a priority for the police department. However, we have to remember that we have 104 square miles to police. We have increased call demand, and we're trying to identify our hot areas and attack those. But basically, at the end of the day, drivers need to be responsible and change their driving habits, and we are issuing a lot of traffic citations. I tell you what, you drive around the city and you will constantly see one of our vehicles out there with cars pulled over. So we are doing the job. We can't be on every street, but we will continue to enforce the laws. Fast forward April into May, we're going to have speed detection devices put in the school zones throughout the city. So that's going to also help in changing driver behavior. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what we want to do.
While you're up here, do you want to talk a little bit about e-bike regulations? And there's a lot of kids on e-bikes.
So that's a hot topic, and we are following some current legislation that's going through the process right now. So we're waiting for the legislators to actually create a law that will give us the teeth that we need to enforce that. But as we can see, that it's a growing problem. As chief, I can tell you it's a concern that I have because of the children that are getting injured on these e-bikes, and we have to tackle this. So I'm confident that our legislators are on the right path. Once that legislation is intact, we'll have some teeth to enforce.
Thank you so much. Irene, I believe this question is for you. Can you please explain the opioid settlement line under the special revenue funds in this guide of the 2026 flyer? Oh, wait.
It's the special revenue fund. We had a class settlement funds that are coming into the city, and they have specific restricted requirements on how those funds can be spent.
It was Oxycontin.
Sorry, that was a completed answer. My apologies. Okay. Why can't we take out loans, and what is the impact on long-term planning?
So the city of Northport can't take out loans because in our charter, the way that it's written, it says that you shall and can incur debt, but then it talks about the general obligation bonds being needed to be blessed by a voter referendum. Now, how that reads is a little bit contrary to each other when you see it and you read it and it says that you can incur debt as a city. The way that it's always been legally interpreted is to mean that means all debt, and that is a problem that we have. I believe that what we're going to do as we go forward is we need to, before we come back to the public and ask for the opportunity to borrow again, we've got some work that we need to do to remove some of the barriers of trust or lack of transparency that have happened in the past, or us combining questions when people thought they should have been separated, or not put too many questions on one certain referendum. We've made a lot of mistakes in that area, and we are trying to get them fixed. And once we figure out the next way to move forward, to make sure that we can take care of the city, because the city has to be taken care of one way or the other, but we have some work to do. Once we do that, then we'll come back and we'll figure out what the next step is in a very transparent and inclusive process.
Thank you. I have a few questions on similar questions. Can you provide an overview on the decision-making process regarding the Winchester Ranch annexation?
We live in a very unique county. And this county, back in the day, made a decision and went out to a vote, and they changed the county charter. And the county charter, normally, I've worked in some other places around the state, and normally an annexation, the landowner petitions the city to annex into the city, and then the city changes the land use and the comprehensive plan or the land use plan for that property to adhere with the city's zoning and the city's comprehensive plan. Here, you can annex in, but then the county has to approve the land use change and the zoning change, and then it goes to the city, and then the city has to approve the land use change and the comp change. At the end of the day, Sarasota County has already given Winchester Ranch its entitlements. That project is going to happen. Whether it's inside the city, outside the city, it's going to happen. Because Sarasota County has already given them the right to develop 9,000, 10,000 homes, plus hundreds of thousands of square feet of commercial. That's going to happen. So, one of the benefits for it coming into the city is we can kind of control. So if this project's already going to happen, we're already going to get the consequences of the project, whether it's inside the city or outside the city. At least if it's inside the city, you stand to gain some benefit, because the project's going to happen. And if it's going to happen, let's get the benefit from it, is one of the schools of thought. And so that is kind of where we're at now. The Sarasota County was kind of making some hard decisions about the land use and the zoning for that project. The property owner wanted some more time to let things marinate, so to speak. So they pulled it off the Sarasota County agenda, and he is having conversations right now with the elected officials of Sarasota County to kind of gauge the way the wind is blowing. So
just to add to Mr. Yarborough's statements, as I mentioned in my portion, the commission still has the final decision for what happens in our city. That is not a staff decision. I think part of some misinformation I saw there said, well, the city staff has already determined this to be it as a done deal. It is up to the city commission, and there will be multiple public meetings that if you have opinions or you want to reach out to them, that is well within your lane of what you should do. They will make the final decision, not staff.
Thank you. So I have a similar two-part question. What is the impact on the City of Florida property what is the impact if the property tax is eliminated? And similar, there is another proposal targeting tax elimination for residents 65 and older. So what is the impact on those if they were to go through?
So the impact on the city on the bill that just got approved by the House would be approximately $18 million in loss of revenue to the city. That is a lot. And there's no plan from the state on how that's going to get funded for that loss. it is very significant because the issue also is that that House bill states that we can't touch public safety, which public safety is priority, of course, but our public safety alone in the general fund is about $55 million. Our property tax currently is about 38. If we lose 18 million, that's going to be a problem. So we will have to be looking at some other ways on how we're going to fund it. If we don't get that revenue, we'll have to look at potential cuts, additional cuts. So the city will get hurt. And even though you can't touch public safety, but if you look at it, well, if you then all of a sudden don't have support for public safety will get impacted. There will have to be some shift, either additional assessments that we'll have to create, if the state maybe would look at additional revenues through sales tax, but so far they haven't shared any of the plans on where that revenue will come from. They're leaving it up to local governments, unfortunately. Anything you want to?
Yeah. Just to say, if it does pass through the public vote this fall, it would be implemented in our fiscal year of 2028. Once it passes, and then they implement it, and it'll come up to our budget at that time. So it won't be immediate as it might seem when it passes, but we would have to reimagine what our government services look like taking that sort of hit, because in some of the minds of the people in Tallahassee, they say, well, then we would have to then implement new fees or taxes to the public, and we don't see that as a viable outlet as a solution for the scenario. We would have to do something internally to make up for that amount of loss.
And the other question was, what would be the other proposal? That's elimination of non-school property tax for homestead persons 65 and older. Per our calculations, it's about $500,000.
Great, thank you. What percentage of the development plans proposals is the Environmental Advisory Board allowed to review? Do you want me to repeat it?
Yeah. Lori Barnes, our Deputy Director of Development Services, would love to come and have a conversation at the podium for that. As she
Good evening, Lori Barnes, Deputy Director of Development Services. Chapter 4 of the City Code outlines the Environmental Advisory Board's roles and responsibilities as approved by the City Commission, and their roles and responsibilities do not include review of development petitions. Review of development petitions for the environment falls to our Natural Resources Division.
Thank you, Lori. How long is considered long-term when submitting ideas for capital development?
Long-term means more than 5 years.
Thank you very much. How serious is the Department of Public Works in establishing the connectivity between Madagascar and Shipley, and are there other avenues being investigated? We didn't even ask you to come up.
Good evening, everyone. Chuck Speak, Public Works Director. And I had to dig into this question to figure out where it was coming from. I do understand now. The city is looking at connectivity through many areas to connect across the canals between the boulevards. The connection at Madagascar is a proposed connection that we are currently trying to acquire properties for. Of course, we have to own properties on both sides to connect the bridge. We're as serious as we can be if the property owners are willing to sell. So we have other connections planned. We have one at Stockton and Caballero. That's just a little south of that location. That we own both properties, and we're about 90% design for the bridge, so we'll go into construction probably in the next year or so for that connection. But we'll be looking for those connections all over the city. So if someone receives a letter from our real estate coordinator saying, are you interested in selling this property, just know that that's one of those things that we do, is we try to catch these properties before there's homes built on them, because they're building so quickly that the areas where I can connect roadways across those waterways are going away. So we're as serious as the property owner would be to sell the property. How's that?
While you're up here,
Yes, ma'am.
can we talk about why has the rehab of swales, ditches, and canals decreased so drastically since the second quarter of 2023?
That's a good one. So our crews took care of hurricane recovery, which put us pretty far behind. And then we had, of course, we had Ian, then we had Helene and Milton, which we did in-house. So we had to reposition all of our crews that typically do that work to hurricane cleanup. Did I catch that? Did I catch that for the person? Don't be shy. Yes, sir.
I got more on this sheet too, if you want to talk to me.
Sure.
Sometime.
I'll answer them up here too. I like it under fire.
Okay. Right. Is there an update at parking at Anna Maria Restaurant? That's what he just said was the same. Okay, just sure. That was all the questions I have up here, unless somebody has more questions. Katya?
I know that in order to borrow anything, we have to go to the voters to get that. Do we have an idea today what our current, how much debt we have, but also what we might be able to borrow funds for if we had a project that was urgently needed and approved?
How much debt we have right now? How much debt we have right now, I'm trying to recall. So we just borrowed for a price, and that was about 60 million, is it 56 million? So that's the project that we just recently borrowed. And then there's some utility that we have that is not on the general fund. We are going through this exercise right now, looking at our budgets and our capital projects and see if we can relieve some room to be able to afford some smaller scale projects. It depends on the cost, right? So something like PD headquarters, that is not something that we could afford with the millage rate that we currently have.
Your hand up in the back, sir.
Yes, can I bring back Anna Maria, the parking situation? Especially the fire hydrant on the street, it's blocked every day. All right, this has been going on for years on that parking, on that little road. You got cars on both sides, you got elderly people trying to walk up there, and as soon as it gets dark, it's headhunter time. Very dangerous. I mean, the amount of cars on that street wasn't made for that street. It's parked from the quality TV all the way up to the motel the other end. And that's an ongoing situation. It's one thing if it was accessible. You couldn't get a fire apparatus up that street with the cars there. So you talked about a safety hazard right there.
Yes, sir. So to address that hazard, we have a project that's that Commission funded last year for linear parking there, which will put in paved parking across the street from those businesses. That project is fully designed. It is currently sitting with our purchasing department and about to go out on the street for bids. So look for some movement on that in the next probably, I would say by by early summer, we should have a contractor in place for that project. This is one of those projects that the money is there, commission has approved it, so I will move it as quickly as I can. Yes, sir.
We have another question on Winchester Ranch. Why was a memo sent out to the county prior to the commission discussing and community input advising the county needed to annex?
I'm not aware that the city sent any correspondence. That doesn't ring a bell with me. That doesn't sound right.
Why was a memo sent to the county prior to commission discussing and community input?
A memo sent to the county. Lori, if you're still here, I'm not aware that we sent a memo to the county. Lori, are you still here? Oh, sorry. Yeah. At the end of the day, this was driven by the landowner. We're kind of passive.
So the application that the developer submitted to Sarasota County included some correspondence from the city manager's office that indicated that, and I can't recall the exact verbiage of the letter, but indicated that the intent was for that property to, or the intent was for that developer to request annexation into the city. And so we were aware of their application to the county for the comprehensive plan amendment that's required under their charter.
Also, the county requires us to be co-applicants. Lori, make sure I get this right. Requires us to be co-applicants for, is it the annexation or the land use?
It's for the comprehensive plan amendment to assign the land use. The charter requires the city to be a co-applicant, as it were.
County charter.
Yes, county charter. Now, we had conversations with Sarasota County, the deputy county attorney a couple of years ago, because we had some concerns about that language and about the city using public funds to apply for comp plan amendments in the county with city resources. You know, under our charter and regulations, we can't use city resources to benefit one property owner, as it were. So the result of those conversations was that the county would accept a co-applicant arrangement or an acquiescence on the part of the city that, yes, we know about this, we're okay with this, versus us applying, because actually the charter says the city must apply. But the result from the conversation with the county attorney's office was they would accept a co-applicant arrangement.
But as the city manager says, at the end of the day, it all goes back to the city commission for approval or denial. At the end of the day, a lot of work can get done, but it still rests the sole decision of the city commission.
So going back to Winchester, when you were speaking earlier, you mentioned that the city commission will review benefits and
there'll be.
Can you identify any of the benefits at this point that 9,000 more homes will be buying?
Like I said before, this project's going to happen. It's already been approved by the county. It may not happen inside the city, but it's going to happen. And from the residents who live out in Welland Park, the benefit is that they have finite costs that are shared. In theory, the more backs you have covering these finite costs, those costs will be less and less on a per individual home basis. The other benefit is that there are over 2 million square feet of commercial in Welland Park, including, I don't know, 300,000 or 400,000 associated with the hospital, SMH. Businesses don't operate in a vacuum. They require customers. The more customers you have, the more business you have. So the other benefit is that the amount of amenities and diversity and business opportunity for that service not only Welland Park but the greater South County area are going to be driven by the customers with a certain range and a certain density. So those are the benefits.
So will infrastructure to accommodate this 100,000 square foot of additional business, which is great.
2 million square feet.
If you have the infrastructure to get the customers there without
6-lane in River Road. You've got the developer built the water plant. The developer built the sewer plant. Developer built the public safety complex. Developer is about to open up a second fire station in a few weeks. Yeah, the infrastructure is being put in place by the developer. Now, it's being paid back to the developer from the collection of impact fees with every home and every business that opens up. But at the end of the day, it's a very unique arrangement. And from the city's perspective, we have to put very little infrastructure in place. It's done under our watchful gaze. It's done under approval, but it is done it's paid for by the developer and the district, the improvement district.
What responsibility does the city of Northport have in the schools in our city?
You said in the schools, Carmine?
The running of the schools, the operations of the schools. Does the city have any responsibility?
We do not. Correct. And the superintendent.
Just wanted to clarify. I've seen some writings about it, and people are not.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
As a licensed roofing and general contractor in the state of Florida, what is the process for us to participate in bidding work for you guys?
So the city does not maintain a list of like preferred vendors, but you can go on our page and there is a link for Demand Star, and that is where you can register yourself. It's a free registration, and select what kind of business you are and what kind of notifications you would like to get. And so when the city issues requests for bids or proposals, things like that, you will get notified, and then in the solicitation it outlines the requirements of the process, right? What you would need to submit in order to bid on certain projects that you're interested in.
Great.
We know the referendum that happened last year on those two important questions out there was the transfer waste station as well as the replacement of the police headquarters. What is the path for future to kind of get us those resources that we're going to need it?
So the transfer station, the commission has already decided that we are going to do an assessment. I think it's a 1-year assessment, if I'm not mistaken. So that one will take care of itself, and then it'll pay back itself based on the nature of the item itself. The police headquarters is still one that is outstanding that we're still working on. I believe that we are going to have to get the revenue that we are projected to come into the city over the next couple of years to be able to set aside and be able to pay for a good portion of it without putting it all into one referendum for the taxpayers to pay in an increased millage. I think that once we do that, the criticism that we had before, which rightfully so, was that if you knew you needed a police headquarters for the last 7 years, why weren't you putting something aside so that it wouldn't be all one cost at one time to the taxpayers? And that's a fair argument. So what we're doing now is preparing for that to happen. Even in lieu of property tax or whatever may happen, we are still going to plan and prepare and build a police headquarters sooner rather than later.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. There are directors in the back if you have more questions while they're still here. But I'm going to end this town hall now. Thank you for coming out. And this has been recorded, and Katya is creating an engage page where all this information will be in along with the rest of them. So thank you.